I'm your host, Dino and get ready to be inspired as you learn exactly how to own your role. And welcome once again to the Own Your Role podcast. I'm your host, Dino Watt, and thank you again for meeting with us here each and every episode. That our goal here is obviously to help you understand how to magnify your purpose and ignite that passion inside of you and all that you do. And I want to just give a big shout out to all of you that have shared this podcast to your friends and your colleagues that you think would gain value from our episodes. And today you're going to get some cool value. I just got to do a little bit of a pre-interview with Knolly, and Knolly Williams is a guy who is unique. He's different. He likes to make a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs would say. And I can't wait for you guys to get to know him, and as I've been able to over the last little bit. So don't forget, always please like and subscribe to the episodes, so the podcast, I should say, so you'll know when a new episode comes up and you can listen to this great information that we're putting out there. That being said, welcome to the show, Knolly.
Dino, how we doing, buddy? I'm glad to be here. Thank you,
man. Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. Knolly, you are known as the business healer. You know,
I am.
I know there's a lot of broken businesses probably listening to this right now, you know, or at least hurt. They might not be broken, at least they're hurt.
Yeah, and that's what I like to say, Dino. You're not broken, you're wounded.
Yeah.
And you know, any business that has an issue where, you know, if you just desire more, you know you should be here. Maybe you should be at 500,000 a year, 1 million a year, whatever the number is. But you should be doing more. There's an issue there, and so I like to come in and bring that healing, and it's a big part of what you do too, Dino. So I'm glad we get to hang out together.
Oh, I think we're gonna have a really good conversation today. So if you're listening to the show, you know, I know you might be on a treadmill or driving your car, but somehow take some notes, because we're gonna have some fun. I can already tell. Well, Knolly, at the beginning of the show, we always want to get into people's stories. I think stories are what connects all of us. So give us your story. Where'd you come from? What are you doing? How'd you get to where you are right now as the business healer?
So I was born in 1970, born in Brooklyn, New York. And my dad was military. My mom was in school. She was working. I think she was working on her master's at that time. Maybe she was working on her bachelor's. Anyway, so it was kind of rough, man. I mean, we lived in Bedford-Stuyvesant. It was kind of the hood.
That was.
And back then. Nowadays, hey, you wish you could own something there. But back then it was rough. And so we ended up moving to Ohio, and my dad was in the military. He was in the Air Force. And so he got a post there. And by the time I was about 6 or 7, about 7-ish, they weren't doing so well together. And so they separated, and it was tough. I was a very sensitive kid, very, very, I was an introvert, still am technically, but I was a super shy kid. And that really rocked my world. And when my mom and dad separated, I started kind of going more inward. You know, my mom became very angry. She became very abusive to my sister and I. So, you know, she would beat us with, you know, whips. Extension cords was her favorite. Wow. And she was just a very angry person. You know, she was bipolar as well, mental disease. And so we grew up kind of rough, man. We by the time I was 10, we ended up, my sister and I and my mother moved to Compton. Well, not Compton area, but right outside Compton, South Central LA.
Wow.
From one extreme to another. And
I was gonna say,
it was like the cheapest place she wanted to move to California, and it was like the cheapest place you could move to. And we figured out why when we got there. It was really rough. 1980, it was not nice then. And so we ended up moving to the outskirts of Los Angeles. And, you know, my salvation kind of came in entrepreneurship. You know, I found out that I could make money if I provided a good or a service. And I just became enamored with it. So at the age of 12, 2 things happened. One, I started taking computer programming classes. I was an undercover nerd, okay? And the other thing happened was I started figuring out this whole thing I call the process of profit, you know, taking that lunch money and converting it, you know, triple, quadrupling it, selling candy in school, selling newspapers, door to door.
So is that like I'm sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt this one. Was that
No.
a natural like inclining, or did you see somebody do? Did somebody model
Yeah,
behavior
it
for
was
you?
it was modeled. So my dad was an entrepreneur.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, when he got out of the Air Force, he went to college, got his degree, but he really liked making handcrafted jewelry. He'd go to the flea markets and he'd set up a
Oh,
table. And I just watched him. And then I watched my mom because it was kind of sort of, the summers we'd be with dad and then the rest of the year with mom.
sure,
And I was like, I saw mom punch that clock, get up every day, have to, not really liking the fact that she had to go to work
sure.
and then punch that clock, come home. And I saw dad like, man, this guy, he just works on the weekends. He's always got a lot of money. So I was like, I kind of like that schedule. I like his way better.
Yeah.
So I think it was modeled. And part of that too was he gave me a little like space in his flea market table every weekend to where I could sell whatever I wanted. So I started making buttons of popular artists, I started selling posters, any artist memorabilia. If you
Yeah.
want it, I have it. I got it. I
Wow.
got
So like artists like
back
music
then,
or
yeah, back then it was like Prince, Cyndi Lauper, Run DMC, all the pop people back then, Michael
so
Jackson.
you were creating some really unique memorabilia because obviously if you're making it, it's not like
Yeah,
they can go to the store and buy it at Sam Goodies for those of you who understand that
sure.
cut of a
Yeah.
there's no Sam Goodies around anymore, but you know what I'm talking
I
about.
remember it. And no,
That's cool.
I used to get all the teeny magazines, and then I would cut out and then I
Yeah.
make buttons, I'd
Yeah.
make different kinds of buttons. I had a button making machine and stuff like that. So yeah, I did anything I could for money, to turn a profit, and I tried a lot of things. I used to subscribe when I was 12. I subscribed, I don't know if you remember this, Dino. It was called Small Business Opportunities Magazine. It was absolutely my favorite magazine.
Dude,
I know
I was reading Mad magazine. I was Small Business Profit
crack Mad and
magazine.
all that. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I like Mad. I like Mad. But no, I read Small Business Opportunities Magazine.
wow.
And I don't know any of my friends that were subscribers, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
was.
sure. Yeah.
And now I know that the whole magazine, it was like one ad after another. It was like they were just businesses that were for
Right.
sale. Like they were franchises basically.
Right.
And that's where I bought my button making machine. And I but what I liked most, was I liked looking at all these business models and just like, man, there's all these different ways to make money. Like it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So so I started studying sort of the game of entrepreneurship and business ownership around 12 years old and when I got in pretty immersed. By the
Wow.
time I was 23, I quit my job. Of course, lots of things happened in between there, but
Sure. Sure.
I quit my job and became an entrepreneur full time.
What was your first business?
My first business was a record label. So at
Oh,
around the age of 13, I got so excited in the music because I was selling artist stuff,
sure.
and I fell across Run DMC,
Yeah.
and I was like, man, I want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be a rapper. So that's what I started doing. I was in the studios at age 15, 16. I
Wow.
was making rap. Back then it was the LA area, so it was all gangster rap,
Sure.
and that's what
Got your
but
NWAs, Two Live Crews, all this.
all
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know about it.
Dude, I
So,
know. I was there. With 72, baby. I know it. That's my world.
so eventually though, I started I returned to my faith, the faith of my youth, and I started doing Christian rap. And that was when I
Oh,
was probably 18, 19. Yeah. And I started a magazine. First I started the magazine, and it was always a side hustle. But eventually I said, you know what? I was a graphic designer at a law firm, and I said, it's now or never. I'm 23 years old. I'm getting ancient. Look how old I am. I'm already 23. I got
yeah.
to do this now. So I quit my job and actually gave my boss a 90-day notice, believe it or not, because I really liked my boss.
Mhm.
And I, trained my next person and everything. And meanwhile, I started a record company.
Wow.
And by the way, I started working from home. And my model back then, I'm 53 now. So it's been 30 years without a W-2, 1099.
Nice.
And my model back then was, hey, if the president of the United States can work from home, so can I. And that's what I did. I've been working from home for 30 years.
I love that. I love that. That's right. He is. The president has nothing on me. I should be.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I could do that. I could do that. So that's what I've been doing. My first business, Dino, I started with $1,800 that I got from family and friends. $50 here, 40 there, 20 there. Hey, I'm starting my business. Won't you support me in this? And a lot of people supported me. They're like, man, more power to you.
Well, they saw you from 12 hustling.
Yeah, right.
They saw you were going to, I mean, because that's a bold thing, first of all, to go and ask people for money, right?
It
and
is.
okay, will you support me in this? It's also a great training ground and lesson.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, oh, I'm going to show you how I can do this, but I got to be bold enough to ask. And every unasked question is a no. So you asked the question. And so now they're like, yeah, we've seen you. You got a track record. Let's see what you do with it.
That's exactly. Awesome. Exactly. And it wasn't, I didn't ask for a loan. I just asked for help. This is something that a lot of entrepreneurs.
Oh, smart.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't ask, there was no equity stake. There was no loan. And I was only raising $1,800 because that's what it would take to do my album back then. And the way I did it, Dino, was pretty interesting. So I created I wrote a letter of what I was doing, why I was doing it, what I felt in my heart, put my heart out on paper. It was one page. And then I had a coupon in there with a self-addressed stamped envelope. A lot of you guys don't even know what I'm talking about right now.
Hopefully those listening to this know what that is. Hopefully the ones that are listening will know what that is.
All right. Well, I love you for that. And so I put the self-addressed stamped envelope and I put a coupon in there and it says, yes, Knolly, I will support you with, and I put a blank number of shares. Each share was $25. Okay. So you could get 2 shares, 4 shares. If you did 4 shares, that's 100. You're going to do 1 share. How many shares can I put you down for? That was my
wow. Wow, that's genius.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, and by the way, if you don't want to make it the check out to me, here's the name of the studio, make it to them, no problem. And so they started coming in, man, and I was so excited. I had $1,800.
Okay, let me ask you a question on that though. I'm going to stop you right there for a minute, because I remember the first time I ever put on an event, and I still remember to this day, the first person who paid me $197 to come to my 3-day real estate event.
Wow.
And Mitch Larson, I remember his name. I remember walking out of my office with that feeling of someone just paid me $97 to come to my event. And the feeling of just pride and like, oh, I can do this. People trust me, believe it. I want to know, do you remember the first check that came back to you, the day when it came back to you with and how much it was? And if not, that's fine.
Yeah, it was $100, and it was Jan Jackson, and she was my wife's boss actually. And I remember, I mean, she was like right away, anything that I would do, she supported me.
Wow.
I mean, I would iron clothes for $1 per item, and she would give me like her husband's like boxer shorts and like t-shirts, just to support my little business.
Please make sure these are creased.
Yeah. And so she was the first one to put in that support. Yeah.
Wow.
And we're friends with her to this day. I mean,
isn't that awesome? Like, I hope people are listening. Hopefully, first of all, I hope you had just had a flashback moment yourself. I hope you're listening to this going, yeah, I remember that first person who believed in me, that first client, that first whatever. But the other side of that is, I'm sure you've done that to other people and you don't even know that you were that first person, right? Mm-hmm. How we can be more of that person. That's amazing. So I'm sorry to interrupt you there. So now you got these people giving you money and you started the business, you cut the album.
Yeah, cut the album. And I told my wife, I said, look, because we went from 2 incomes, to one income.
Sure.
And we weren't really making that much money. I mean,
Sure.
you're talking right at about $1,000 a month.
Yeah,
each,
yeah.
Back in the day. This is in the 90s. And so early 90s. And so I told my wife, I sat down with her, I said, look, and by the way, I've been married 31 years now, and I've learned a few things.
A few things. I know.
I've learned a few things.
I'm right behind you at 28. So
right.
I get it. I get
Well,
it.
this was my first year of marriage. Okay. I was about 6-7 months married when I quit my job. And one thing I did learn, Dino, is you ought to have a talk with your significant other before you quit. I didn't know that back then. I just came home. I was excited. I said, hey,
baby, guess what?
I did a little thing today.
Check.
Did a little thing. So she was like beside herself, like, what? Like, this is insane. Like, how can this even work? Who did I even marry here?
Yeah, right.
But so I sat her down. I said, look, if you will cover us for the next year, okay, it's going to be tight. We're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that we've done, but we'll make it. And just let me grow my business. You'll never have to work again. Now, they talk about making promises.
Oh,
I said, you do 12 months, you will never in your life have to work again unless you want to. Now, I'm not one of those guys that from, you
have an option. Yeah.
But you'll have the option to never work again. And that, I was like, man, that's as I'm saying, I'm like, that's a sweet deal. And she said, okay, let's do it. 11 months later, Dino,
wow,
she quit her job. And she's never worked outside of working with me since then.
Holy moly, that is amazing.
So we've been almost 30 years with entrepreneurs both, with one income. So that's been a huge blessing. Well, that little $1,800, 5 years later, I was making $150,000 a month in that business.
A month
as
a record producer.
As a record producer, of course, I had huge overhead.
Sure. Yeah.
And we were distributed by EMI Capital. We had a niche of a niche. Talk about, we were doing Christian rap. We were doing Christian music, and it was rap music. But we became world's #1 for that genre.
Wow.
Most people have never heard of us, but our fans, man, everything we put out, they just, we had over 700 Christian bookstores that carried our product. We had all the churches, were into our stuff. So it was very lucrative, but I had no idea, what I was doing. Not even a clue.
That's the best thing, right? That makes it even sweeter. And it's a great lesson, right? For people.
Yeah.
Well, I got to figure it all out before I start and get out there. 2 lessons there, right? First of all, just get off the pot already. Like, just do it. And number 2 is, obviously, and people have heard this before, the niches are in the riches. You and I were talking a little bit beforehand about how I did not expect to be so heavy in the orthodontic space. And I'm so grateful that I have. And I'm branching out to other places now, because now I've learned, I got a foundation, right? I know what doesn't work, but to niche that down. And here's what I like. I think, Knolly, and I get this from you as a person, is just from the short time we've known each other. It wasn't about being the most popular. It wasn't about everybody knowing your name, but you were doing it in a space that you believed in an area that made sense. You probably gave a ton, not probably, you absolutely gave opportunities to people who might not have had those opportunities before.
Sure, absolutely.
You created 100%. A space of the Christian rap that help people get their art out there.
Right.
And to an audience that maybe they didn't have to succumb to some of their let go some of their values.
Absolutely.
And they could create a popularity and fulfill their dream without having to compromise. That's huge. And I think people really underestimate the power of what's the niche. What's the niche?
That's so true. And the riches are in the niches, as you mentioned. And what happens eventually, Dino, like where you are, is you start to have multiple niches. So, and I think of a niche as a division of your company. It doesn't necessarily have to define you, but it is a division. So when I was in real estate, I had a division that did distressed property. Okay. And I became so well known in that space that I was doing hundreds and hundreds of these. And whenever I did a luxury property, someone might say something like, well, because a lot of times, Dino, people, those of you listening might be afraid, like, hey, well, won't I cut out most of my clientele?
Right.
Well, the truth is, there's a reason why a heart surgeon, okay, makes 153 to 156,000 more than a general practitioner.
Sure. Sure.
Yet statistically, they work 30% less. Okay, they have 30% less visits. That's because there's three things that happen when you create a niche. You're sought out, you're in demand, and you're relevant. Okay. When you don't have a niche, when you're the I do it all,
Yes.
you're not sought out, you're not really relevant, and you're not really in demand. You know, if you think about it, you can actually charge a lot more, because if I had a heart condition and I need a cardiologist, guess what? I'm not looking for the cheapest, guy in town, to
100%.
do my surgery. I'm looking, I'm not going to pay, maybe the most expensive, but the reality is I'm going to see who can get the job done.
I want the best. Yeah.
I want the best, and I'm going to work on their terms.
Yep.
We're going to make it work. So then, like you said, the niches are in the riches, and don't have a fear around, really stepping into your niche. The other thing I want to mention on that is you have to understand who you are. That's so important. In my new book, I talk about hone your superpower as the foundational thing. And that's what I did back then. I started off as a rapper, but I realized that there was a lot of guys out there that were better than me. And that was a blow to my ego, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
thought I was like, man, I'm like, really? And then I get these demos and I'm like, man, this guy's better than me. Like, so I just started signing these guys, but they didn't know anything about business. They didn't know. And see, my superpower, I'm a systems person. Whenever I take the assessments, whether it be the Genius test, the DISC test, all the others, Myers-Briggs and so on, I always test out as an engineer. So I'm more of the way I think is like an engineer. And so I'm highly into the systems side of things, whereas these guys were just artists. They just knew how to put it down and they were good. And I could do that, but I was better on the other side of it. So I just started, sort of managing their careers, if you will. And that was a better position for me. You know what I mean?
That's what I talk about when I talk about owning your role. This idea of like really own who you are at the highest level, the expert side of things. Dan Sullivan talks about don't do the things you're an expert at, do it at a genius level, right? So to rephrase what I just said, like do it at a genius level, do your genius. That's the role.
Absolutely.
Stop faking it. Stop trying to play somebody else. Stop trying to do something else. Be who you are. And when you there, not only do you feel like you're, I sometimes equate it to being in a river where you just like put your feet up and let the river take you.
That's right.
You're not trying to be in control. You're just letting the current take you where you need to go.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
Yeah. It's almost like, I use the word surrender.
Yeah. Surrender.
But when you're fully in your superpower, if you think about, so I grew up with the Justice League. Okay.
Yes.
These new guys, they have Avengers and all that, right? But I had the Justice League. Yeah. We're talking about Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, and a bunch of others that would come together and whoop some ass. Right?
Yes.
We might have to beat that out, but I'm talking about they would put it down. They would put it down.
Yep.
And what you have to understand is, if you're the Incredible Hulk, I'm not going to send you on a stealth mission. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the Incredible Hulk has a great superpower. He knows how to smash. Yeah. That's about all he can do. Yeah, he gets upset and he smash. Now, if I need somebody to smash something, we're going to go with the Hulk. But if I need a stealth mission, I need somebody to quietly go in and you're not Hulk. You stay behind. We're going to send in Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Somebody. So the reality is, and it's okay. Like you don't have, if you're the Incredible Hulk, you don't have to feel bad about it. There's going to be, there's a zone of genius that you have, and you're going to be able to be used when it's appropriate. But knowing who you are is so important. And then your team members is the same thing. You understand who they are, and then you put them in the right roles. Now we have, everybody where they're supposed to be. And we've got, again, the Justice League or Avengers, and
Avengers, yeah.
everybody's working together to make it happen.
What a great visual that is. And I appreciate you. Thank you for breaking it down in that way. I've heard a lot of different ways to talk about being your superpower, your genius. And I don't think I've ever heard it put that way where it's true. Like if you look at the people that the Captain Americas, the Batmans, whatever.
Yeah.
Of course, we all know they have their superpowers and their weaknesses, right? But why are you people who get upset of like, dang it, I'm not Batman. It's like, okay, but you're Wonder Woman. Like, go with that.
Right.
It's okay.
Let's go. And here's the cool thing too, Dino. What I've discovered is that most people, most Homo sapiens, okay, only possess one or two superpowers.
Yeah.
It's not a whole lot of them, and
Sure.
that's okay. You really only need one.
Yeah.
And once you figure that out, you can apply it in any industry, because most people are trying to figure out, who am I? Like, what am I here to be?
Right.
I see it this way, Dino. I see that we're here for three reasons. Number one, we're here to be. Number one, we're human beings, not human doings.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to have an experience. That's what being is. We're here to do. We're here to, obviously, we have a mission, a purpose that we're here to tackle. And then we're here to give. We're all givers. Okay, whether we decide to actually give or not doesn't change the fact, because giving isn't something you do, it's something you are. And so when you think about it, a lot of people are like, well, what would I be good at? What should I do? That's not the question. Because once you understand your superpower, Dino, you could do it in orthodontics, you could work with the plumbing industry.
Sure. Yeah.
And you still would change lives doing what your superpower is, connecting with people, right? And like my superpower is connecting with others. So I could do that on stage, I can do it through books, I could do it through YouTube and so on. And I can do it in different industries. I used to always joke about the plumbing industry because I happen to be, been in real estate the last 20 years, and I was in the music industry before that, and I've been in software and so on. But I would say, man, if I was selling plumbing parts, I'd still be doing what I do,
Yes.
with a different crowd.
Yep.
Lo and behold, I was at an event a couple months ago. This guy works with a plumbing company that makes over $1 billion a year. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to joke about being in plumbing parts anymore, because they sell plumbing parts, but they sell billions of dollars of plumbing parts. So yeah, your zone of genius can shine wherever you happen to be,
I love how you just said that, because it inspired me to think. I just wrote down on my board here about how, I had a lot of jobs over the last, 50 years old. I've started working when I was 12 with my dad doing concrete, my stepdad doing concrete. I've had a lot of jobs. And sometimes when I go through stuff and I'm talking to people, they'll say, man, I was a limo driver in LA. I worked in Hollywood, all this other stuff. But I just wrote down, because you inspired me, I've had multiple jobs, but my role has never changed.
That's right.
Always been about relationships. I've always been about connecting with people. I've always been about coming up with ideas.
Yeah.
That's really, for me, thank you for that.
That's revolutionary when you think about it that way. And it was an epiphany that I had probably 12 years ago, because I've been studying this whole idea of what your purpose is, like, what are you here for? And I would always look at it from the angle of, what are you here to do? And I was like, that's not really it. It's, who am I? And then what I do is a conduit for who I am. It's just a channel. Yeah. I'm just channeling, just like you said, you did all those jobs. And so many of our students, I'd like to call, Dino, come to us and they're like, well, just tell me what I should be doing. And they think that a role is what's going to satisfy them. And that's not it. It's honing and owning your superpower, and then showing up with that, no matter what that role, what that happens to be. So I'm glad you got that epiphany there, Dino. That's good. I mean, you've always had it. You've always been walking in it. You just may have not heard it.
Yeah, it brought some clarity to the own your role process for me. Even the idea of, I always say this, that there are tasks that you have to do. There's a job that you're paid for, but there's the role that you own. And that role is who I am as a human being walking on this planet.
Sure.
And that's awesome. That's very cool. So
Yeah.
now you've taken all of this and you've been able to see this evolution of, let's bring us up to date a little bit on you, a multiple book writer, and you were in the real estate world forever. And now, like, where are you showing off your superpower now? Who are you most affecting your superpower now?
Now it's more working with entrepreneurs and helping any entrepreneur, earn $250,000 or more a year working 3 hours a day. That's really my thing.
Wow.
It's really about efficiency. And what most people don't realize, whether they're in chiropractic or whether they're, massage therapist or real estate agent or whatever it might be, is that when you look at I'll give you an example. Well, what I was going to say is, just to finish that thought, when you look at what it is that you do, probably only 10% of it is what really moves the needle. Like, it's really moving the needle toward the income bracket that and we call those income producing activities.
Sure.
So when I was in the real estate space, I was always about, how can I do this smarter? That was, just the way my mind works. It's like, how can I engineer a way to do this more efficiently? And so I got it to where I was able to do 100, 150 transactions without working more than about 2 or 3 hours on each transaction. So while many of my colleagues were working, 60, 70 hours a week, I was working maybe, 10 or 15 hours a week. Okay. And I was outselling them. I was in 2008. So I got my real estate license in 2004 after I lost everything. So in the music industry, everything went digital.
Sure.
And I did not shift with the market. I had my head in the sand and I didn't see what was coming, and I didn't change my label over to digital soon enough. So I was bumped out of that industry in a sense. And I think I just lost my taste for it. And I got in, and when I sold my house, when I was 26, I bought a 6,000 square foot home right outside Austin on 10 acres. And it was a very nice house. And I sold that house and I paid the realtor $29,500, whatever it was, $537. I still have the settlement statement. I look at it every now and then.
Inspiration. And
I was like, man, this guy just made 30 grand. Like, I just paid him 30,000 and I probably saw him twice. But I'm thinking like, maybe that's something. Tell me more about this real estate thing. So he schooled me on the game and I got really good at it. And within 4 years, I was the number one agent, okay, in Austin. Number one. Austin Business Journal came out with, in 2008, they came out with their top agents in town. And I sold 96 transactions as a solo agent.
Wow.
And I was the number one agent in the city out of 9,800 agents. And so I kind of tackled the game. I figured it out, but I was super efficient. Okay. And so what I learned was, when I talked to other agents and how they were operating their business, I was like, man, why are you, like, things that I would take for granted that I was doing in my business, they hadn't even occurred to them that they could, delegate and outsource and so on. So one day I was with my massage therapist, and she says, Knolly, I want you to teach me to do what you're doing. I was like, oh, you want to get into real estate? She said, no. I like what I'm doing. I just wanted you to teach me how to build a team so I don't have to work all the time. And I was like, well, I do this for, she says, yeah, but it should work in my industry. I said, well, we can give it a shot. So I taught her my system over several months. And I got to tell you, how, Dino, when you have those students that just take what you tell them and they apply. I mean,
you mean your favorite students?
Yeah. So Julianne was one of these. And within about 8 months, so she was in a chiropractor's office as a massage therapist. And if she wasn't, physically there, she wasn't making money. Wow. So I taught her, hey, here's how you're going to leverage yourself. Within about 8 months, she was completely leveraged. She had 3 full-time people, and she broke her foot. Okay. She couldn't work for, I don't know, like 4 months. And she told me in a session once, she says, Knolly, if it wasn't for you, I'd have lost my house. I said, what do you mean? She said, you remember when I broke my foot, I couldn't work for 4 months. She said, back the way I was before, I wouldn't have been able to make my mortgage payment.
Yeah, of course.
But because of what you taught me, I didn't skip a beat. So she took it now, Dino. Last time I saw her was a couple months ago at a coffee shop. I ran into her here in Austin. She now has 3 locations. She has over 50 massage therapists. She gets 50% of every booking. And it's interesting because when you go into her office now, one of her locations, they don't even know that she does massage. Like, and when I met her, that's all she did was she was a solo massage therapist working for a chiropractor.
Yeah.
So what I figured out, Dino, was that these principles that I had adopted in my various businesses over the years could work in any business.
Yeah.
And so that's why I decided I'm going to share this. I'm going to put it in a book. I'm going to share my 7-step blueprint with other entrepreneurs so that if you choose to, you don't have to work as hard as you're working. And at least if you are working, it's by choice, it's by design, not by default.
Now, was that the first book? Because I know you have multiple books, or is
No,
this the newest book coming out?
I just came out with. That's the one I just came out with.
And tell everybody what's the name of the book.
It's called 3 Hours a Day. 3 Hours a Day. It's on McGraw Hill.
3 hours a day.
The whole idea of it is that if you would, and this is all science as well, a lot of university studies behind it, but if you would spend 90 minutes a day working on 2 big picture priorities, that's going to move your business 90%. So 90% of that $500,000 or $1 million a year, whatever you want, is going to happen within that 3 hours.
Wow.
And so, and by the way, Dino, any business will only, as an entrepreneur, you'll only ever have 2 problems. Okay. You either don't have enough money in your business or you don't have enough time. If your problem is money, that's if it's cash flow, then you have how you fix that is lead generation. You have to generate leads and you have to create more appointments for yourself. Leads and appointments. These orthodontic, they have to generate more clients and customers.
Yeah.
If you're that orthodontist that everybody goes to and you're booking 90 days out, you've got a time problem. Yeah. And you basically solve that problem with leverage. You bring in 2 or 3 other
doctors. Sure. Yeah.
You teach them on your principles and your system. You make them better than you. Like all my artists that were at my label were actually better than me. Okay. And I was still one of the artists on the label, but I picked people that were better than me. And you have to not have that complex about it, because these people, even though they're really good, they may not have the superpower you have, and they need you. It's not like one can work without the other as well. So
that's a really interesting insight, because I don't think a lot of people are comfortable with that. They want to hire somebody who can do the job, but I don't want them to outshine me. And I've been in those situations before where people were, wanting to talk to Dino more than the owner, and the owner gets upset about it. I'm like, I'm just supporting you, man. I'm making you look good. Right. But yeah, it's a big challenge for a lot of people. I think that's great. 3 hours.
That's an ego risk when you get into a point where, and I was very insecure for many, many years. Yeah. Because of the way I was raised, my mom would tell me terrible things that I know now, no mom should ever say, like, you're worthless. I'm sorry I ever had you. You'll never amount to anything. And so a lot of my entrepreneurial journey was, I'm gonna prove you wrong by watch me. Look at this house I just bought. Look at it. And so I was trying to prove to mom that, hey, see here, hey. But really I was trying to prove it to myself because I felt unworthy, know. And when
we're all kids on the inside, just trying to
all on the inside,
heal, right?
We're all 3 to 5-year-olds, all of us. And that's part of the business healing process as well. There's a lot of what we do out of a trauma response. And those responses were good at the time. I left home when I was 16. I was on the streets for 2 years, going from house to house. Stay with this homie, that buddy. That's how I lived when I ran away from home. And there were certain things that I gained, like don't trust people, things like that were really beneficial. Sure. But they don't serve me anymore. And so you have to shed it and say, you know what? I appreciate you. I honor you. I thank you for getting me this far. But buddy, we're going here. And it's time to shake hands and leave those limiting beliefs behind,
Well, you mentioned something a moment, I think is one of the biggest problems is I think a lot of people recognize they have maybe a trauma or a challenge, but for the most part, especially for people who are successful, a lot of those traumatic things or those belief systems of let me show you, or
Mhm.
that's actually what got you here.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
to go to somebody and be like, hey, we need to heal that and get
Yeah.
rid of that and move on from that. That's the scary part. Because like, no, no,
That's
no,
the
no, no.
scary part.
This
Yeah.
this overemphasize of perfection or this desire for all control or whatever.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That got me through college. That got me through.
Sure.
I'm successful. That's why
Sure.
people love me.
That's
And
right.
for
That's right.
me, having to go through that myself, and still there are pieces where I'm like, oh dang, I see where I'm holding on to that because there's pride and the wound is
Yeah.
it was a survival mechanism and I survived. And there are people who don't survive. I get it.
That's
But
right.
if you're listening to
That's
the show, you're probably someone who's gotten through stuff
right.
and that's what helped you survive. So why would you get rid of that? And the
Well, at
answer
the end of the
is
day, the day, what got you where you are is not what's going to get you where you want
that's
to be.
right. That's what
And
the
the
answer
reality
is,
is,
right?
it will stifle and bottleneck your business.
Yeah.
You see, if JC, if he came in every day and said, people will only do business with me, I'm never going to hire anyone else, he would have never grown to another store or 4 stores or 5 stores. And if I went into JC Penney and says, look, I'm not going to buy a suit until JC Penney personally comes up,
Right.
they send me out of the store. I mean,
Right.
you see what I'm saying? So you can't, your business, the trajectory of you cannot scale with that mindset. The only way you can scale is for you to get out of the way. Because
Yes.
you are the only reason why your business is not growing to where it wants to be. Your
Yeah.
business wants to get to a certain level, but who's stopping it? You are. Nobody else. You're the bottleneck, and I refuse to be the bottleneck in my business. I remember when I was Dino, because I'm really good at all things artistic. So man, I'm editing videos. I'm like, why in the hell am I editing video?
Oh, geez,
The
you're
guy
talking to me right now.
I pay I pay this guy $1,000 a month, and I guarantee you he's a lot better than me. He lives in the Philippines and he does great video editing, and that's what he does for me. I mean, and so at some point you don't have to do this. You can always hold on to it, but just realize that what you're doing. I ask people all the time, do you want 100% of a grape, or would you like 50% of a watermelon?
Mm.
See, the reality is you're holding on to 100% of a grape. And yes, you do have all the control. But at some point, when you start to partner with others who are strong in the areas where you're weak, that's the only way you're going to really grow. People come to me all the time, and Dino, they say,
Knolly,
hey,
hopefully.
yeah, hopefully they say not. Man, I'm going to hire somebody, and I'm hiring somebody just like me. I'm like, man, that's the wrong. You hire the opposite of you.
Yes. Yeah.
Because now you hire somebody that's just like you.
You ain't getting anything done.
We got 2 people not getting anything done. And by the way, everything that because I say delegate what you hate, right?
Yeah.
So everything that you hate doing, they're going to hate doing because it's just like you. Now you
Yeah.
hire the opposite of you. Everything you hate doing, they love it. They
Yeah.
eat it up. It's candy to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to partner with others.
There's Dan Sullivan released that book a couple of months ago, The Who Not How, right? And that's a principle
That's right.
I talk
I love
about a
that
lot.
book. It's a great book.
Talk about that a lot of just like, man, you got to find this or that. So I had a doctor on a call a couple weeks ago, and they're like, man, I just don't know, how am I going to get that done? And I went, oh, see, there's the difference. There's a difference. The telltale sign of the difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner.
That's right.
An entrepreneur goes, who can do this for me?
That's exactly right.
A business owner tries to find the time, tries to figure it out. And you never, ever will be successful as just a business owner. You need to be an entrepreneur. You got to have that mindset.
And most of them, Dino, got out of the rat race only to find themselves on a hamster wheel. They don't own they don't own a business, they own a job.
Yes. Yes.
I tell my students, I say, man, you don't own a business, that business owns you. You mean you can't take a month off right now? I mean, like my wife and I, and by the way, it is an adrenaline rush. That's the reason why we, workaholism has been, we figured out what dopamine and all those fixes that we're getting from being workaholics. Yeah. And so what I've done is I like dopamine. I mean, I like it. So I've rechanneled it. So now I say, hey, okay, I'm going to, it might be a Thursday. One time we did this, my wife, on a Thursday, a friend of ours invited us to go on a European trip for 3 weeks. So I just fixed everything, and by Tuesday we were on the plane, and it was 3 weeks going to be gone. That's a dopamine rush for me. Like,
Sure.
and it's a one-way ticket. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know when I'm coming back. And so there's other ways that we can get that fix that we desire than killing ourselves inside of our business. You know?
Yeah, well, there's as Joe Pollard says, it's the one addiction that is universally celebrated.
Yeah,
Workaholism.
that's right.
It's like, it's a badge of honor. It's the like, oh, you know, I don't want you to be an alcoholic or whatever else, like, but workaholic. Oh, good for you. And we celebrate that. It's like, no.
Yeah.
And I love that idea.
Outwork them all.
Where are you going to seek that dopamine rush?
Exactly.
Like, where are you going to seek it? Where are you going to reprioritize? I want the dopamine rush to be with my family, or to be on vacation, or even a hobby. We were joking a little bit about golf earlier, right? It's like, hey, if that's your rush, great, do that. If that gets you out of the office and make sure that you have other people doing stuff for you, that's awesome. Knolly, so gosh, I can't believe the time has gone so fast. You have been,
we're having fun, man.
You've been just a plethora of information. I mean, there are little pieces too where I'm sitting there going like, let's go all the way back to the beginning of this conversation where you said you asked people not for a loan, but to give you the money.
Right.
I mean, that struck me big time. I know there are probably people on here who probably were bold enough to go and ask people for money as a loan. And then now you've lost sleep over the times that you couldn't pay them back, and you're worried about paying them back. And I did that. With my first show I ever produced in Hollywood, I asked family, friends for money. I gained all the money, and it took me almost 20 years to pay them back.
Yeah.
And I thought about it every year whenever I'd meet them. Are they thinking about this? It messes with your conversation.
Sure
so
does.
to have the boldness to say, no, I just need you to give me the money.
Yeah.
Believe in me. Right. And that's fascinating. That's awesome. Well, we have gotten to a place where we ask some very specific questions around our roles in life. And it's our final 4 questions that we ask. It's kind of rapid fire. Are you willing to play?
I'm willing to play. Yeah, I don't have any idea what you're going to ask me, but let's go.
Well, before we get to that, we definitely want to make sure that people know, go to Amazon to get your book. And where else can they connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me. All things, it's just go to knolly.com. That's if you can spell my name, you can find me. KNOLLY.com. And it's my real name. People ask me that all the time. It's a West Indian Caribbean name.
Nice.
And you got an amazing name too, Dino. So
we're brothers in names, right? Because I get that all the time. So I got that this weekend. So what's your real name?
Yeah,
it's actually Dino. It's on the birth certificate. Like, I didn't make this up, especially as a kid growing up in the 70s. I would not have chosen the name.
Exactly. And that's what I tell people all the time. By the way, I'm a junior, so my dad had the exact same name, which is hence probably one of the reasons I got, a few extra whoopings, because I look like dad. I had the same names, like,
somebody's taking out their frustration on the Knolly Jr.
By the way, I reconciled with my mom when I turned 18.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for this.
She is a beautiful person now. She's very warm, very friendly. But mental illness is a real thing. And so and
hurt people, right? So
that's exactly right. And I cut that cycle of violence because I'm all love, baby. It's all love.
That's the most important thing. You know what? It's funny because, and I'm definitely, I just want to say this is, I think sometimes our biggest lessons are of what not to do in life, if we're willing to look at it right.
That's right.
And I think oftentimes people use the excuse of I was this, or I came from this, or that's what I saw. And so how, I can't be blamed for it. It's like, well, everyone has the opportunity to look at something and go, I don't want to be that.
I don't want that. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. Well, awesome. Okay. So question number 1 is, when we talk about owning our role, I want to know, what is the highest and greatest responsibility that you feel you have on this earth?
To leave a legacy. For me, the legacy is, and it's not just to leave a legacy, it's to live a legacy. For me, that is, scripture says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. I think the real legacy that we leave behind, Dino, is our knowledge, the how to actually do something. And we leave that for our kids, our grandkids, and future generations. Because statistically, they show that if I leave, all my houses and everything to my kids, it's statistically 18 months
Yeah,
and
it'll
they
be
flush,
fun.
but what you're leaving behind, like with this episode, that's going to stick for the next, maybe 5 or 6 generations that it hits the right person.
I believe that's one of the reasons why I love books so much. And I never, I
Me
mean, I
too.
have dyslexia. I hated reading books when I was a kid. And that, I always say whether my book is good or not, what will be is 3 generations from now, my great great grandkids will be able to read a book and go, this
That's
is
right.
how grandpa thought.
That's right.
Like no matter what on this subject, he thought about
That's
that.
your legacy. That's your legacy. Yeah.
Number 2, what do you want as the ultimate outcome for life?
The ultimate outcome for life is to be happy. For me, it's to be
Just to
happy.
be happy.
And I look at happiness as a byproduct of living your purpose.
Mm.
When you're living your purpose, if you look at your life and you're not happy, there's something off. Like you're not in step. You're not
Yeah,
owning your role. And so I see it as a byproduct of living your purpose. You live your purpose every day, and happiness is going to be inevitable for you.
totally. What do you consider true leadership to be?
True leadership to me is servanthood, like literally. And I tried to explain this to a business once, and they almost laughed me out of the room, but I think they finally got it a little. But what you have to understand is when you have a team, say 12 members, 14 members, 3 members, whatever it is, you actually work for those people. It's not the other way around. A lot of entrepreneurs think, oh, these people work for me. But when you really look at the role, they're looking at you like, hey, for guidance, like for all their needs. And so you're there really to serve them. So for me, it's like scripture talks about it being a shepherd, but it's really being a servant. Like, how can I serve you? What do you guys need? Let me know. And I'm there to get it for you.
Your team members wake up every single day to make your dream come true. So
that's right.
Act like
that's
it.
Right. That's right.
Last question. Before you die, which all of us have that date, right? We don't know what it is, it's unknown, but what experience do you hope to have or want to have between now and dead?
Oh, the thing that comes to mind, I see a stadium, buddy, and maybe we'll be doing this together.
Oh,
I see a stadium, man, and it's packed. It's packed and it's packed, and there's a lot of smiling faces, but there's a lot of hurt people there as well, and they're there to heal, man, and they're there to learn a better way of living and a better way of being and a better way of business.
wow.
And so I see.
Beautiful.
The message being projected to them, and I see lives being restored as a result of that. So yeah, I see myself speaking in stadiums. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Love it.
And Dino will be right there. Maybe I'll be your
I'll do it. Yeah, I'll be there. You bet. I'll be the warm-up act for you. That's
it might be the other way around, Dino, from what I know.
This has been amazing, Knolly. Like, just I can see how you heal businesses because of your heart, of your passion, and just your knowledge and understanding, and what a lifetime of lessons that you have filed in that brain and that soul of yours that you can help people. I'm going to just implore everybody listening to reach out to Knolly on all of the social medias. And is it the website is it KnollyWilliams.com?
Yeah, no, Knolly.
Just Knolly.com. That made it easy.
That's it. I scooped that up. I scooped that up a long time ago.
There are too many dinosaurs in the world for me to get Dino.com. So, but Knolly.com, go KNOLLY. Check him out. Check him out on his socials, on Facebook, on Instagram, YouTube, and go get his book. It's up there right now on Amazon. Go get his book. Leave a review. But Knolly, thank you so much for joining us and blessing us with amazing knowledge and information insights today.
I appreciate it, Dino. My pleasure, man. It's been fun, and you've been such a wonderful host.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Everybody listening, I just want to thank you again for being a part of the Own Your Role audience and being able to share this information with those that are around you. Remember to subscribe and follow to make sure you get notified when great golden nuggets of information for the last 40 minutes show up again for our next guest. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode of Own Your Role.